Yeah, thanks for coming, everybody, on a Friday night, our first Mad in Germany live, and I'm very happy to do it with Musa Okwonga. Give up for Musa as well. So Musa is kind of a legendary Berliner Wahlberliner who covers a lot of different topics, from football to sexuality to politics, migration, racism. Author of quite a few books, but in Berlin, probably best known for In the End, It Was All About Love, which I have to recommend. Despite not liking sentimentality in general, the book is not a sentimental one. It has a great journey, and I think it's very relatable. But I want to ask Musa, so is it still all about love?
Yes, even more so. I wrote the book at a time, as you described it yesterday, it's basically about sex and poverty. But you were right. You were being, you were joking, but there was a truth to that. It was really about trying to find intimacy at a time when I was really struggling as an artist. And what really matters when you are struggling, when you've got this big creative dream, you've put everything behind it, you've sacrificed everything for it, and it's still not quite working out. Luckily, it has worked out, but it was difficult for a few years back then. And this city and the search for love, both romantic and platonic, is what has kept me going. So, yeah.
And, what's kept you in this city during that search? Because, you list quite a lot of the same difficulties that I see complained about every day on the dating market, on the political side as well. And that's only got worse over time.
Yes.
So
I think it's the community, it's the people. Berlin is a city where you have to be a bit lucky, for sure, with your job, with your housing situation, your circle of friends. But if you keep rolling the dice and you get lucky, then the rewards in terms of community are incredible. The people you meet, unbelievable. And it's a very social city, actually, in a way that people don't always acknowledge. You can go out any given night, and the classic Berlin thing is to go out to a bar you agree to meet your friends at, and you'll pass 3 or 4 bars that are like more vibey than the one you end up at, and at which point you're like, actually, should we just go back there? And Berlin is like, I think it's almost, of all the cities I've been to, like yourself, you've traveled a lot, it feels unique in that respect. It's a uniquely social city.
But what about, do you think it's going to remain that way? I feel like there's a lot of talk about, this is a conservative run city now, right?
Right.
The cost of living, the housing situation hasn't got any better. Do we think Berlin is going to end up like London, perhaps?
If it's not careful. Like, I spoke to several friends. I said, look, when I got here, I said, I feel like a time traveler from the future, telling you how not to do things. So I've just come from London. They got a lot of stuff wrong there. And I said, there's a lot of things you love about Berlin, but if you don't protect them, you'll lose them. And over time, we've seen so many situations, not to name them all, but for example, the sacking of the housing minister, the guy that was really, I said Andre Holm, the guy that was really, he really cared about gentrification. He had his job for like a couple of weeks and they sacked him. Or the rejection of the referendum on reclaiming social housing or reclaiming housing. All of that stuff, these are all turning points in Berlin's history, and this stuff never had to happen, right? So it feels like we've passed a lot of these points that was, the current situation was completely avoidable. Crucially, though, so also is the future of Berlin. Like the bad futures for Berlin, and they do exist, there are multiple bad futures, they are also avoidable.
So you mentioned the housing referendum. I mean, housing is a huge issue for a lot of people, right? But I wonder if Berlin's situation is going to be something that we can change at the ballot box next year if you pay that much attention to local politics.
I think that, look, it can be, but I think Berliners have to understand that we are in a crucial moment, and maybe an existential moment in terms of what Berlin is as a city, right? Because we just saw a report that came out in the Financial Times or Reuters, I'm not sure which, a few months ago. Germany can afford to spend 2 trillion and still not be in debt until it's in debt, right? And it's cutting culture all across the board, cutting billions in culture all across the board, while pumping a ton into the military, which it needs in many respects. But what you've got then is a militarized middle class without the social critique that comes from the cultural sector. So what the Conservatives are doing are fundamentally reshaping German society, and I'm not seeing enough discussion of that discourse. Now, Berlin is a particular target for the Conservatives because they resent it, because it's responsible for so much of their soft power internationally. They don't actually like Berlin because, as you'll hear even the Chancellor saying, Kreuzberg is not really Germany, which is a wild thing for a Chancellor to say, by the way. It's like super xenophobic for a Chancellor to say that.
And of course, he just said that there's a problem with the cityscape, with the Stadtbild, right?
So you've heard this comment, right?
I'm sure he's referring to Neukölln, among other places.
Can I just say, with the chance, let's just pause for this a second. But first of all, to answer your question, your initial question is that, yes, it can be changed to the ballot box. People like Ferenc Kocak have been incredible in terms of advocating for a better Berlin, but Berliners have to listen to what this is. This is not a normal election. It's an existential election for Berlin and for Germany. But the next thing to say about the Chancellor, I want to say this on the record, the only thing I'm not clear about now is what type of injury the Chancellor of Germany wants non-white people to have when they go through city centres, because it's pretty clear that he doesn't think that this is actually Germany, right? So he's put a target on us from that perspective. He's already said there's a problem with the cityscape because migration is causing a problem. Here's the thing. As a so-called specialist who pays the tax in the highest bracket, who speaks German, there is something that Merz still resents about me in this country, and I can only conclude it must be my skin colour. So I want to ask Chancellor Merz, rhetorical question, because he won't answer, he won't care about this, but what kind of injury do you want me to get? Is it facial? Do you want a broken nose, a broken skull? Because you clearly want people like me, who look like me, to be beaten into submission or into hiding or silence or out of the country. So I just want to know what form of violence you're asked to be perpetrated, because it's clear that you want something terrible to happen to people who look like me, who do all the things that a German's supposed to be doing in terms of integrating society. So that's all I want to know, really. What kind of injury does he want visited upon people that look like me?
I mean, we are recording in Neukölln, and this has been 2 years where we've seen pretty much unleashed police violence against people who don't necessarily look typically German, right? And not only has it been almost uncontroversial in the media, it's actually been egged on in many cases. And we actually just saw yesterday that the UN has released a report calling, with special rapporteurs for freedom of assembly, calling for, Germany to stop repressing Palestine protests. Right?
Unbelievable.
So it starts off with protests, as it often does, on a controversial issue, one that's especially controversial for Germany. But as we know from German history, it often doesn't stop in one place, does it?
When you have observers from political parties being punched flush in the face by police on camera, the first thought is, that's horrifying. And the second thought is, what is happening off camera? This is the thing. And if that's happening now, then what's been happening for months? Well, we know you've been documenting it, your excellent work in that respect. And I think that the German authorities get away with a hell of a lot because the soft power is not the same as the American situation. Actually, Germany and America have lots of parallels. I actually refer to many parts of East Germany, where I spent a bit of time, as the Deep South, actually. I feel it's very similar. But the difference is that Germany avoids the scrutiny the Deep South avoids because Germany does not have the cultural capital internationally. So a lot of things happen under the radar that if they happened more visibly, people would be absolutely shocked about the state and the degradation of democracy in this country.
I mean, that's actually kind of picking up on how a lot of my work is, because ultimately so much of what I do is not hard work. I'm just translating. I'm just screenshotting, I'm translating, and that is raw, that's news, that's a form of reporting. But ultimately the rest of the world, there's a language barrier. They don't speak German, they're not going to learn it. So much of what I do is actually just repeating and quoting, and people are shocked.
There's something else that you do, James, because it's not just a language barrier, it's an imagination barrier. People could not believe that in Chemnitz a few years ago, black people were being hunted in the street and beaten up. They could not believe this. Even when you shared footage of it, even when you translated video of it, they were like, oh no, but it's dealt with this Nazi past. And I was like, hang on a minute. What does that actually mean? Because if we know that islands like Usedom have a huge Nazi population, they just went there after the wall came down, went there, set up communities, parallel societies, ironically enough, and set up social services, and basically created that there are vast Nazi ecosystems all over Germany. There are entire towns where if you go there and do a gig, you cannot do a gig as a musician without engaging with a Nazi-run security service. Imagine what that is like. You go to the town of Cottbus, it's a big town, Cottbus, it's not far from here, and you have to engage with that. Or like me, one of my best friends is from a very small town in Sachsen-Anhalt, go there now and again, it has a 50% AfD vote. That is something I have to engage with. And it always makes me laugh when I'm told by people going, go and engage with the right. I'm literally engaging with the right. Could not be more dangerous to do what I'm doing now. The only thing more dangerous is actually having children and going to these parts of the world. But I live there. I see Nazis all the time on the way here on the tram. How much more engagement do we need to have? And how about these Nazis start engaging with their own humanity, actually? Why can't we get to that point?
And, engaging with the far right is not always something you have a choice about, right?
No.
We both live in East Berlin. And actually, particularly around the Ostkreuz area. That's something where neo-Nazis have started to... It's
encroach,
exactly. It's like the cross between Friedrichshain, which is this left-wing, liberal, multicultural to an extent, Keats, and then you've got Lichtenberg, which is also left-wing, if you look at the votes. But if you look at it more deeply, the young people there skew very much to the AfD, and it nearly went to Beatrix von Storch, who was a pretty extreme character even among the AfD.
Well, look at the musical. What's the name? The Verti, the Uber music hall right here. Right, it encroaches more than that. One of the leading figures in the far right mixed martial arts scene hired a box a couple of years ago in the Uber music hall and was lording it over everyone. If the equivalent figure, if an Islamist. It's unimaginable that an Islamist would be allowed to hire a VIP box at the Uber Music Hall. And that is something that was absolutely fine. They're absolutely fine with it in this country. And I'm like, this is mind-blowing to me. You know what's going to happen a few years from now? Everyone's going to go up and be like, oh, how did this happen? It's literally under your noses.
Yeah, I mean, people like to draw parallels between the ways that the police have treated pro-Palestine demonstrations as well as the neo-Nazi ones, right? And they protect the neo-Nazi demonstrations.
Totally.
I have spoken to conservatives about this because I always want to hear why do they think this is okay? And a kind of conservative-leaning friend of mine, he said, well, the Nazis follow the rules. Right,
the Nazis follow the rules.
So when
the
you're
Nazis
about...
that kicked in my friend's door near Ostkreuz, the Nazis leaving graffiti in my doorway, those Nazis.
Yeah, well,
the Nazis that assaulted me in 2017 outside Warsaw, those Nazis.
Yeah, exactly.
Doing politics the right way. Sorry, doing politics the right way. Yeah,
pardon the pun.
Yeah, absolutely.
So ultimately, I think it's quite a tricky time, and as you mentioned, Saxony-Anhalt next year, it's possibly going to be the beginning and the end of the so-called Brandmauer, because it's just going to be the AfD might have enough to govern alone.
Well, we saw yesterday, and was it 2 days ago in Prenzlau, 92 kilometers from here, Stadio mayor elected with the AfD help, and one of them said, oh yeah, well, to me, Brandmauer is a foreign word. It's already happening. We know for a fact that in Saxony for many years already, the AfD and the CDU have been working together at a very local level, and that's where it all starts. Good friends of mine live in Saxony-Anhalt. I was there recently doing a reading in Leipzig, and they said, we didn't want to invite you. We were nervous about inviting you because we weren't sure you'd want to come, because that's how things are politically. We were anxious about putting you in political danger. And I was like, look, here's the thing. If this is happening here, I have to be here. And I'll always take an invitation from you if it's extended. But now they don't ask anymore. And now I've got friends, incredible friends who do all their great work, who now get escorted to readings in the East. They only go there if they're getting a lift there and back. And these are people who've done like work in very dangerous places, work in literal war zones, who are now being escorted to and from book readings. That's how extreme things have got.
Wow. And what do you think is behind this rise in support for, a fascist party in part?
I think it's a variety of things. Obviously, you talk about the inequalities, financial inequalities, we talked about that. But I think there's a deeper issue. There's an ideological issue. There's the East being left behind. There's also the funding from the billionaires. It's an easy scapegoat. But I think also as well, I think Germany, from what I see, if you look at the recent report that came out, a quarter of people who've migrated here are considering leaving again. I've got friends who've already left. I've got friends who've gone to Netherlands, Senegal. It's funny because the split, if you look at the split in terms of race, the non-white people have gone really far and the white ones have gone just over the border. So they've gone to Denmark, they've gone to Netherlands, but they're leaving. And actually, it's not people like me, it's not loudmouths like me you have to worry about. It's the ones that leave quietly in the dark and never come back. And they were heartbroken. They're all Fachkräfte, all of them. Brilliant. A friend of mine went off to Morocco, Senegal, they're bouncing. And this is a massive loss to Germany. All the conversation on Anne Will, Germans who've come here, migrants who've come here, who've learnt German, who are fluent, it's the ones who are the best qualified, the ones who made the most effort to integrate, who are like, actually, this country fundamentally doesn't want us here. They love our labour, but they hate us. As people, they hate us. And this isn't just like Moroccans and Senegalese people. This is Portuguese people.
Mad in Germany has grown to be a platform where we can really talk about issues that the mainstream media, particularly in Germany, ignores and provide a different, more critical perspective. If you appreciate that perspective and hearing the voices that we put onto the channel, then please consider donating to Patreon. And can I ask you, do you know what the number one earning nationality is in Germany?
Was it Syrian?
Indians.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and
good friend of mine leaving. He's leaving again soon.
Mhm.
Like one of the I can't name him, of course, but one of the leading tech professionals in the world is probably leaving the next couple of years because of the political situation here.
Funnily enough, I looked at that study just a few days ago, and the number one reason given was, if I remember correctly, political situation, right? I think that's a euphemism for the far right rising, but it's not. Number two was bureaucracy. I can also say that in the worst days of my freelance tax nightmare, I have considered leaving just because of the bureaucracy, right?
Yeah.
As a journalist, the political situation is scary.
It's euphemism, though. It's euphemism. It's the racism. Like, I talk to a lot of my Indian friends, and they'll tell you straight up. And like, these are people that are not necessarily going to go public about this stuff. And some might say, you're lying. I was like, well, fine, okay, that's great. But do I sound like I'm lying? I'm still here because I believe in the future of this city and sometimes the future of this country. I was down in Bavaria. I'm in the small towns. I spend a lot of time in German small towns, maybe more than a lot of my work German friends. So I see this stuff and I see the good and the bad when I'm there. And
what do the people say to you? How do the people respond to you?
Well, it's funny because that town actually, which is 50% AFD voting, I actually spoke at the school. I spent all day talking to the students and the parents in German all day, and they were amazing with me. And I think they respected the fact that I went there, and I didn't point the finger, not because I couldn't have done, but I was more like talking about what it actually feels like to receive racial oppression. And I told a particular story, which I'll just very quickly relate, is that I got there and we found someone's smartphone, very expensive smartphone, lying on the ground. We called them up to like make sure they came and picked it up. And the guy that ran around the corner was wearing a neo-Nazi clothing brand. And I gave his phone back to him, and I told this story at the school, and they were like, "What? Oh my God," they were shocked. And I was like, "Well, why did you give the phone back?" And I was like, "It was his phone." What do you think? What did you think? Like, and they were shocked because they almost imagined like, oh, he's a black guy, he'll nick. And the guy that got the phone back was like shocked for me to give it back. And then he barely thanked me for it. He was just like, his mind was blown. But the parents at the school were interesting as well, because they were like,
maybe he'll reflect on that though.
No,
right?
and that's my approach in those places. I don't go there and like, go, oh, you're this and that. I'm more like, you have no idea what you're unleashing here. Like, you enjoy the hate in an abstract sense, but you don't enjoy watching it being enacted on a human who you kind of like. You don't like that.
And do you think that your approach is different from the way that the maybe like liberal mainstream Germans, the Green voters and stuff might do this? Because obviously most people there's a taboo around being a Nazi, right? Or being a fascist. But that taboo is clearly eroding, and this moralistic idea that you just can't do it while agreeing with some parts of the ideology seems to be, counteractive or counterintuitive.
I think like you need to. I would wonder how many of those Green Party voters actually correct the racist family member. We had a family dinner a few years ago, and one of my relatives came out with an anti-Semitic remark, and we basically took their heads off. Me and my sister, like, we're not doing this. You're not saying that again. And they've shut their mouth. This was this was over a decade ago, and they've never said it since. And that's the energy you need to have for this stuff. Like, it's not just don't be a Nazi. It's like, no, actually, on a human level, don't dehumanize people. We're not here for that. Or just because we're having like a roast dinner together, you can say you're like nasty, you can spew your bile. That's not what I signed up for. And actually, I'm not going to spend Christmas with you if that's your energy.
I actually had a very similar experience, and that's why I don't do family Christmas.
There it is, but that's the energy. That's the energy. I'm not seeing this energy from enough white German people, if I'm honest. I'm seeing it from a lot, but not enough, if I'm real with it. Not enough.
I mean, it's kind of, sometimes it feels like they're getting their safe spaces, right? And that's when they're loud and proud. And there's also this idea in Germany that you don't need to include people. So there's no need for representation. So there's one anti-racist NGO. I'm not going to name names, but they're all white, white Germans, and I've heard, very unequal in terms of who's paid there. So it just feels quite performative rather than actually showing some civilcourage.
And to be clear, I don't have a problem with an all-white NGO that does anti-racism work. I actually don't inherently have a problem, because a lot of the best work, anti-fascist work, got done by East Germans. There are East Germans who had the hell kicked out of them in the early 90s, who never met a black person and got beaten up on our behalves. And to me, those people are as cool as the day is long. The issue is more like, what work are you actually doing behind the scenes? What difficult work are you doing? So I just returned to a story. A friend of mine called me up and was like, oh, you need to do this and that in your activism about this. You should say this about race, a white friend of mine. And I said, here's the thing. I said, when you're with your friends, how much of this stuff do you say to them? And she was like, oh, it's difficult. I said, hang on a minute. You want me to go on national TV and do an interview and use these like talking points about race, but you won't confront your family and your friends. And she was like, oh. And I said, here's the thing. And I'd done a podcast with her and I said, take that off your website. You are not going to use me to raise your profile. And we're still friends. I said, you're not going to use me to raise your profile if you won't speak up to me in public, in private. And here's the thing I'll say about this as well, right? There's a big thing in Germany, and I can say this now, and it happens a lot in Berlin. There are people that come here, enjoy the diversity, enjoy the queer surroundings. When they go home, because they like being the favoured daughter or the favoured son or the favoured kid, they won't speak up. So they're basically using us, taking us for granted. And I don't appreciate that, actually.
So do you think that increasingly in Berlin, as maybe it becomes more full of Swabians and people from Hessen, we're kind of like the migrants are kind of the, with a background in their story?
I will say this, look, shout out to my Swabian friends, because actually the first Swabian I knew in this city is my first partner here, actually. And she was doing some incredible research on the far right and the infiltration of Ketas. She was doing great work. So I'm not going to allow Swabians off the hook for that. Like,
Schwabilon.
Be good people. Yeah, be good people.
Okay. But do you feel like that's something changing in the city as well?
Gentrification, yeah, for sure. I mean, look at the cost of living. Like the place I'm living in now, my landlord said to me, if that was back on the market like 8 months later, he said, you got in lucky, like you got in early. Like the prices now are like,
yeah,
it's wild. Like I would never get that place now if I went for it now. It's unbelievable how fast. I mean, when I first got my first flat in Berlin in 2014, it was €700 a month, and that was expensive. And now that same space is like, you'd be lucky to get it for like twice that, actually.
And I wonder also if Berlin has just become slightly less attractive as a party place, or there's maybe, flight prices have gone up. So I feel like it could also be Brexit related. I feel like my friends don't come to hang out here as much anymore.
There's there was a brilliant deconstruction, an Estonian woman who I met when I was working in the, when she was working in the one of the bookstores locally. We had a chat when I was waiting for my coffee, and she articulated it perfectly. She said, what's happened is hedonism in Berlin has been completely hedonism in Berlin has been completely decoupled from the political conversation. So you've got like a lot of tech money in the city flooding into the city. You've got Elon Musk going to Kit Kat. That's the emblem really of that. Like queer space is meant to be a place of liberation, political strength. But now they're not affordable for a lot of queer people. Young queer people finding their way, forget it. You can't pay €30 on the door. Once you get into these places, okay, like the drinks aren't too expensive, but the barrier to entry is literally, it's unaffordable for a lot of these people. And this was a place which a generation ago was absolutely open for business, but open for pleasure. And now it's not.
So you're saying it's no longer poor, but is it still sexy?
Do you know what? It is. It is still poor in a lot of places, of course, as we know, like, a Keats, like, Märkisches Viertel, all those places, like definitely like Rudo, parts of that, like parts of the east, parts of the west, still even further out, like there's still parts of Berlin that are poor, very unequal. I still think it's a sexy city if you're in the right circles. No, it is.
You just wrote a piece for the Erotic Review, right?
I did for my
that was my segue.
Yes. It's not as much fun as it sounds. Yes, there's 3,000 words on, it's called The Resilience of Desire, and it's basically about how and why you keep going in a city which has a lot of racism, a lot of homophobia. And for me, again, it's the community, it's the experience, it's the spontaneity. And I now have a fantastic partner. The journey to love was a long one, but it wasn't always a difficult one. And, the thing about Berlin that's amazing is that because so many people come here from all over the world, a lot of your lovers, your flings, they become your friends, actually. And they become lifelong friends. So people I had a short thing with even a few years ago, people I still hang out with and just catch up with.
But as well as the positive side, you open the piece talking about, some of the more negative things where once you've already been intimate, they have made some rather inappropriate comments.
Yeah, of course. Well, the problem is, sex is an experience, it's an adventure for all of us to varying degrees. And there are times when you realize that in the moment, you've been part of their adventure. You've been the subject of a fetish. Actually, even the word fetish is weird because it puts the pressure for the attraction on the person being desired as opposed to the person having the desire. But anyway, another story.
Maybe you're part of the bucket list.
Yeah, I think you feel that. Like, so I was in bed with someone a few years ago and like she made like a reference to my skin color, like a derogatory reference to my skin color, like not long after the act had been consummated. I'm like, yeah, you could have told me that before. Like, I would have rather you'd have said that. But in a way, I rationalized it as, do you know what? We had a lovely time, and now this is never going to happen again. And you're going to know why. You're going to know why. And this actually is the tax on pleasure, because actually you don't get to do this again.
Especially if they read the piece, right?
Yeah. Yeah. One of them might read it. Yeah. But no names. There's no names because, we keep it classy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in terms of keeping it classy, we've talked about sex. We've talked about
not really enough, but still.
It's Friday.
It's Berlin. It's Neukölln. They want more. They're like, oh, go there.
The night is young.
People are sitting up. You could hear them. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's Friday. The night's young.
That's true.
For more. But one topic we haven't covered yet is football.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Without wanting to be superficial, how many people, if they looked at Musa's style, would think this is a famous football commentator, right? I'm talking about dressed a bit like a hippie biker or something, some kind of cross between the two.
Yes.
And what is that's not what I associate the Berlin football scene with, right?
Oh yeah, football's not really a thing here, I got to say, which is quite nice in a way. It's nice to sort of step away from everything like that.
I mean, it is, but it's like Hertha, Union.
Yeah,
right?
but it can do without it. When I say it's not a football city, I mean it can do without football. If football vanished tomorrow from Berlin, you could still have an incredible time here. Whereas some cities, if you took away the football, it would be hollowed out, right? So we had the Champions League final here in 2015. Barcelona played Juventus. And if you avoided like 2 or 3 trains, you would not know that match was happening in the city because, Berlin is a vast city, which is what's so great about it. My love for football comes from primarily my grandfather, who was actually the president of the Ugandan Football Association. And he also coached the Ugandan national team for about 10 years. I think a couple of my cousins played for the Ugandan national team as well. So we've always had football in our family, and I've just grown up obsessed with it, basically. So, yeah.
And how has it been? You've rubbed shoulders with a lot of famous footballers, co-wrote a book with Ian Wright.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that's kind of a part of your identity that is almost separate? It's professional. You don't see it out here. Do you ever go to Hertha games, Union games?
Yeah. I went to poor Hertha. The first game I went to theirs got cooked 3-0 by Wolfsburg. When Ollie Glasner was there, actually, great coach Ollie Glasner, doing great things at Palace. But I like having separate identities. Like I like, writing about queer issues as a bisexual man. I like doing that. I like doing making music. I'm a musician as well. I like having the football stuff. It's almost like what's that cartoon when we were kids, Mr. Ben? Do you remember that?
Yes.
The guy that would
very British reference.
He would go into the back of it was a cartoon. He'd go into a clothing store and then go through a little sort of secret window, and he'd go into a different world.
Yeah, have adventures based on what outfit he was wearing.
Yeah, and I feel like
costume.
That. Yeah, I feel like that. I feel like the thing I love doing is the range of things that I do. So I love having these separate identities. And actually, every now and again, I have a gathering of friends, and I'm like, damn, these people are none of them know each other because I'm quite scattered. But I like being scattered. Yeah.
And do you think this is a good place where you can bring it all together?
Oh my God, it's perfect. It's there's an algorithm designed this city for what I do, which is it's a shame because if I have to move on one day, and I might have to in the next few years, because politically, I think Berlin or Germany, more accurately under the AfD, will not be the Germany we know now. I mean, this is very clearly not Merkel's Germany. It's very much Merz's Germany, and that's a frightening thing. I've got to be honest. I just don't know where I'll get this combination of things again. So I'm enjoying it while it lasts.
So, we both actually left the UK for around similar times, you a bit before me, for kind of similar reasons, right? Political, seeing the direction of the country around before Brexit, in your case, just after it, in mine. Would you leave straight away if an AfD government came in?
I'd leave before. I'd one foot out the door. Look, I think any migrant has one foot out the door at all times, spiritually anyway. I would not be, if I had any hint, if the polls were holding steady and they were way ahead, I'd have bounced, man. I'd be gone before that. I'm not going to, man, you wouldn't find a speck of dust from me in this country after that. You wouldn't.
That's interesting because, you mentioned different people of different races having different approach. I'm not sure I would leave, but also because I'm a journalist and I feel like that's when we need people to report on what happens. Right?
No, you're right. Look, here's the thing.
And you've been outspoken about the rise of racism, so maybe your voice would be needed more then.
It's funny because even as I say that, I go back and forth on this all the time. So if you ask me this in a month's time, I'd be like, no, I'm staying, because it's staying and doing the work. I mean, there's multiple times I almost left Germany. When I received verbal abuse, when I was physically assaulted, these things, they stick in your mind and you're like, do you want to get out before it's too late? But then part of you is like, man, these people, there's always a part of me, there's a stubborn part of me that's like, these people will have to drag me away from my desk mid-sentence. And that is still a part of me. That's a sizable percentage of me right now, even as I speak. There's like 30% who's like, hell, you're not going anywhere.
Fight or flight.
Yeah, exactly. And that dichotomy exists, I think, in a lot of us, to be honest. In a lot of us, yeah.
Yeah, and I wonder if, I'm not sure if it's going to necessarily be, one day we wake up and the AFD's in government. I wonder if it's going to be more of a gradual kind of unraveling of
it's like damp. Firewall. It's like damp in a building, or it's like gum disease, right? You don't notice it at first. After a while, it's first imperceptible. After a while, it's everywhere and you can't get rid of it. And I think that's what's happened to our democracy. It's was it the Larsen B ice shelf that in the early 2000s it basically collapsed in the space of a few hours, but actually it had been melting for years and years. But the actual collapse was like, because the structural damage was so vast. Like the thing that makes me afraid is that the structural damage to German democracy is already so severe. And so when I talk about like, would I leave AFD government? I think the question is more, let me put it differently. We've got a few friends, and like, if we look at each other and we're like, it's time, whenever that point is, we'll be like, it's time. And there's like 3 or 4 of us that talk this way. And that might be under an AFD government, to be more accurate, or be more sanguine about it, or it might be before. But we'll all know when it's time, I think. We'll all know.
That's interesting. I'm in two minds personally about whether Germany can react and turn the ship around.
Me too.
There's this idea that Germany's like a slow tanker, and it's actually been around for about 100 years. You mentioned right at the start that you felt like a bit of a time traveler here, and I could sense that when I arrived, because internationally there was this idea that Germany was like the progressive bastion. Under Merkel, girl boss leader who stood up to Trump. But when I got here, I realized, no, it's actually just very conservative. They didn't get hit so badly by the financial crash.
No.
So actually the politics hadn't changed. Austerity hadn't started to bite yet. And we're starting to see that a little bit now under the Merz government more than anyone else, I think. And I wonder if we're going to see the same trends that we've seen across the rest of the world, but actually worse here, because it's already seeing, AFD are consistently in first place in the polls now. And can Merz do anything about that? He came in saying that he would halve the AFD, right? They've actually doubled since he came in as the CDU leader. Partly because they didn't do very well in the pandemic, but also because he's been promising that he can, make changes on migration, refugees, all of these issues which for his voter base are big, and he makes bigger by promising and making such a big deal out of them. But actually, how much are people's fears based in reality, and how much are people just angry that they see non-white people in pictures on the news, or that they can't pay their gas bills and that they're losing jobs?
I'll tell you a story. I witnessed an attempted murder 10 minutes walk from my flat in Petersburger Straße, number 92. I was at a house party a few months ago, and we were just in the back garden. It was during the Fête de la Musique. We weren't particularly loud. We were just out in the courtyard. People had made some food and some beer, just a normal, courtyard party, no big deal. And I was talking to one of the guys at the party, and then a stone slab drops from the 4th floor and it shatters into about 5 or 6 pieces right next to him. If it had landed on his head, at the very least, it would have put him in a coma, and it would more likely have killed him, right? We all left the party in silence and shock. I posted about it on social media talking about this, and someone said to me, and this is the story to answer your question. I posted on social media and people were like, this is an attempted murder. Police saw the tweet, which went viral, got in touch with me. We had an interview. They never actually interviewed the people dropping the stone. And here's the thing, right? Here's the clincher. As we leave, the translator, who'd been lovely to me throughout, said, the thing about Germany, he said, it's not that it's a racist country. It's just that people, this is the translator, right? The friendly guy said to me, the thing about Germany, it's not that it's a racist country. It's just that people see, they see migrants in adverts and they see black families and they think this is not Germany. And then they get like, oh.
That is racist.
And that was the nice guy. So I know it's a long story, but that anecdote to me explains perfectly, like, that's where we are, man. That's where we are.
There's a level of denial about it, I think.
People, because it's horrifying to acknowledge that this is what still resides here. When you tell people the stories, and one thing I do when I go to these schools and whatever, I just tell the stories. I don't go, this is racist. I just go, for example, in Bad Belzig, there's a guy, a friend of mine, a brilliant East African artist. He lives in Bad Belzig. When he first got there, he was told by a very friendly, lovely, genuinely lovely, like, anti-racist German ticket collector. He said, "Do you know where you're going on this train line?" The guy said, "Yeah, I'm going here." He goes, "Be sure." He said, "Because 3 people have been murdered. 3 men have been murdered because they got off at the wrong stop late at night, and there was a pack of Nazis waiting for anyone that got off that wasn't white. And they beat them to death, but the deaths were not recorded as murders. And as you know very well,
Wow.
There's a massive discrepancy between official deaths at the hands of the far right and actual deaths. It's like, I think it's the ratio is like, I think only 40% of deaths that actually happen in the hands of the far right are recorded as such."
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, 3 people that we've never heard about murdered just because they got off the wrong train near Bad Belzig. That is a thing that has happened in Germany in the last 15 years.
Yeah, that reminds me, about 5 years ago, there was a study that came out from like a Norwegian center of researching extremism. And it found that per capita, Germany actually had the most extremist related deaths, as in murders by fascists. I just remember this was one of my first kind of shitstorms on Twitter, posting that, because the vitriol I got for posting a study, right?
Right.
People just didn't want to believe it. And I feel like sometimes with these topics, with this denial of the racism, which exists everywhere, right?
Yes, of course.
But it's every country has issues with racism. You can look at our home country, the UK.
Course,
we had race
course.
riots last year, and they just got completely forgotten about.
Totally.
Pogroms, I should say.
The difference is, with the UK, there are not entire regions where there are like travel advisories about where you'd go after certain times of night. There are not S-Bahn stations equivalent in London where you're like, you would not get off that train at a certain time of night. You wouldn't go on that train. There are literally places like that in Berlin. A 20-minute drive from here, you'll be in like a Nazi area. I mean, I literally know the names of restaurants where the Dritte Wege meeting. We know that, right? Like it's so, and this is why, again, I just always tell stories. I went to Leipzig, and a friend of mine from Leipzig, she loves the city, as do I, wonderful city. And there's always that moment, like, do I break her heart and tell her what I really felt about that place? And like Leipzig station, gorgeous, looks like the beginning of a Wes Anderson movie, gorgeous, right? Stunning. Oh, love it. Like the beginning of the East, in my opinion, in terms of such a grand setting. She said to me, "How was Leipzig?" And I couldn't be honest with her, right? Because the first thing I felt about Leipzig, first thing I noticed, you look at the local departure board of the trains, the only reason I knew the names of those towns is because black people had been murdered there. Alberto Adriano, walking home at 1 a.m., beaten to death. They kicked his eye out. 3 Nazis kicked his eye out. Coming home from work, 3 kids. Uri Jallo. Like, the only reason I know the names of Hoyerswerda.
Killed probably by the police, right? So.
Hoyerswerda. The only reason I know the name of those towns is because of like, right, and I still go to these places, don't get me wrong. I still go to them, still turn up in them.
But you have to be careful.
Yeah, exactly. The cab driver in Hamburg who said, "Pass auf." 4 times in 10 minutes. "Pass auf, Bruder. Pass auf."
Wow.
Yeah, he said, "How?" He said,
Hamburg.
Yeah, in Hamburg. He said, "What do you think of Germany?" I said, "Man, whenever a Turkish German guy asks, how do you find Germany?" He's always going to give you that kind of uncle advice, right? Especially if your name is Musa. When they see you got a Muslim first name, it's like all the family advice. Brother, have kids. Come on, brother. What are you doing? I've got 3 already. And he was like, I was going somewhere to do this show at like some local arts exhibition. And he said 4 times in 10 minutes, "Pass auf. Watch out. Take care. Be careful." And he said, "How do you find the discrimination here?" I said, "Look, I mean, like all cultures discriminate against each other." He goes, "Yes." And it was the most literary answer he ever gave. He said, "Yes," he said, "there's all kinds of racism. There's racism against black people, against Kurdish people." He said, "But the most dangerous racism in this country," he said, "is the 150-year-old blonde-haired, blue-eyed racism." He said, "That is the racism to watch out for. Be careful, brother." And then I left. I mean, again, I'm just telling stories, but this is, and again, look, I have an incredible life here, right? I have an incredible life, incredible friends, best people I've ever met, incredible partner. And also living here is a cost-benefit analysis. It's a constant calculation between how good has it been and how difficult could it get.
Yeah. You have to take your life in your hands here sometimes.
You do. You have to really go for it. And again, look, it's a great city in terms of opportunity, creativity, like the people I've met here, the publishers, Charmaine right here, like the community of people doing incredible work. These are people that you do not meet in London, in my opinion, in this concentration, because it's not just the cheapness of living. There's a certain dynamism to the creativity. People have come here to make a gamble, and that self-selecting crowd of Berliners makes a very special cocktail. So one of my cousins said, she's like, "Look, your productivity since arriving here, the number of books you've written before you got here and since, the number of music projects, everything has just gone like And she's right. And the city, I owe the city that. I don't do that without Berlin. I don't do that any other decade.
Yeah. I wonder if it's kind of an island people talked about in the Weimar Republic, like the Red Island of Berlin, surrounded by conservative forces. And
Yes.
I mean, now Berlin isn't maybe as red as it used to be with a conservative mayor. But if you look around on any kind of map of election map, it's all blue, 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 blue.
You can feel it as well. And I feel for the people in those small towns. I feel for the progressives in those towns. I go to these places, and I was talking to a friend's mother, a lovely, lovely woman. And the thing that was really painful there was she'd always wanted to travel the world, but she was a carer. So she never got to travel. So when you go there, whenever you're there as a foreigner, she'd love to hear your stories. Loveliest woman, very small German town, like no more than like 4,000 people. And I was thinking, hang on a minute, this amazing progressive woman who never got to travel, who was stuck in this small town for financial reasons, good financial reasons, and, professional, personal reasons. But she now knows that people don't want to go and see people like her because they know that like that town votes 40% far right. And they're the ones I feel sorry for actually as well, because they're like, people in Merz aren't talking about, we don't get these exhibitions because people don't want to come here, and we get it. Like, that is heartbreaking. We're really proud of our town, but we know why you don't want to come. That kills me to hear that.
Yeah, and I think you have to remember, in any place, even if it's 50% AFD, that means it's 50% people who aren't. And many of them would oppose the AFD, and often the most engaged people, the people who are involved in local arts, they're going to be the people who, they're the kind of lib wine mums against the far right.
Yes. And I want to speak about a guy, Tahir Della, an amazing human being. He goes and he protests in like frightening parts of the country, like Zwickau, like places I wouldn't go or wouldn't go yet. I'm not brave enough to go there yet. And I said, dude, like, how do you, and he's one of the leading activists, anti-race activists in Germany, incredible guy. And I was like, dude, how do you go there and not be afraid? How do you do that? Like, and he was like, I'm always afraid. I'm always afraid. He said, but as long as there are non-white people there who need us, I've got to go there. If there's one person that's not voting AFD, I need to be there. And that energy is like,
damn.
I mean, he was my superhero before he said that, but now I was like, man, this guy's like
yeah,
absolute hero. Yeah.
So earlier this year, since we're on this topic, I actually did go to a proper neo-Nazi rally in Dresden, and it was the Trauermarsch, which is like a vigil, a march for the bombing of Dresden, which was of course done by the Brits. So I had to, keep my accent quite quiet there. I'd really just seen thousands and thousands of people wearing all of this neo-Nazi stuff, lighting. And at the end, one guy we interviewed, I was fixing for a UK newspaper. He really just said, "Yeah, I'm a proud National Socialist."
Yeah. We're nationalists. Yeah,
he was young as well. He was 20 years old.
Oh yeah, look. When you get that train, that gorgeous train ride from Berlin to Prague, right? Stunning, right? One of the best. Go through Cis Saxony, what Stadtweiler, and all this. Oh my God, stunning! And I'm like, I can never live here. Like, I would love to retire, like near Stadtweiler. It's gorgeous. That train ride. The beauty of going to Prague for holiday is the holiday begins the moment you get on the train. Oh my God, man!
Shout out to the dining cart.
Shout out to the train. Yeah, and shout out to the forest in Thüringen. In Thüringen, I went through Thüringen, and I'm like, it was so beautiful. I got out my phone and was like, I had to like pin it on Google to be like, what is this gorgeous place? Now, I could never live in that part of the world. Maybe parts of Thüringen, but not certain bits, because just politically, socially, this breaks my heart. It breaks my heart. But again, I would still visit now and again to do work there because we can't abandon people. And also as well, these people don't have a mirror held up to them. Like, I go through these parts of Germany, and actually, to be honest, most of the time, no one says a damn word.
Yeah.
Because it's all theoretical to them. Like, I hate the theoretical black person, the theoretical source of my woes, but do I actually hate someone standing opposite me, dressed like a, what do you call it?
Hippie biker, I said.
Hippie biker, yeah.
I actually had a similar experience. I was with a non-white friend in Bad Schandau, which is on that same train route, a really beautiful place. And we wanted to get a historic tram up to a waterfall. It was the last tram. And, I will admit I love trams. Right?
Oh my God, I'm a big
vintage ones
tram
in Eastern Europe, right? That's part of what keeps me in this part of the world. And this guy was like cleaning it, and he said, "Oh, the driver will come in a bit." And we were just waiting there for the driver, and it was the last one. So I asked him, will we be able to get up and down in time? He said yes. And then he actually got in the driver's carriage, slammed the doors closed, and drove off. you know? And so I almost experienced racism vicariously there,
So
because
weird.
I'm sure it was because I was with a, you know, British non-white friend.
Yeah.
And, you know, it never happened to me before, because why would it? But it left me
When you
questioning as well.
When you see it, yeah.
Because it wasn't aggressive. He didn't say anything explicitly racist. And it left me for a good 30 seconds like, did that just happen?
Yeah. Do you know, there was a Moroccan cab driver I was talking to a couple of years ago, and he told me a story that was really heartbreaking. Been for 35 years. So the most painful thing he said, as someone that lived in Martzan, the most painful thing he still found was when he found like people like, you know, people would talk to other white Germans, and he speaks like fluent German. He's been there for 35 years, you know, and they would turn to him and completely change facial expression. The smile would literally disappear from their faces, and then they would go back to their friends and the smile reappears. And he said that is so painful on a human level, because you can't even engage with me on that level. And I've had that, you know, speaking German, going to places where it's just like, but the way I deal with it is I just ignore the hostility. I just pretend it's not happening. I'm just like, yeah, right. And eventually they're just like,
force, you know, you're the bigger man, basically.
Yeah, you just completely like just blanket, like, you're like, are you really doing this? And then they kind of like,
you have to have a thick skin to do that, though.
Yeah, but you know, I've been around, man, so it's cool. Yeah.
Do you think, because I've interviewed really great anti-racist writer Alice Hasters,
she's
who's
amazing,
Black German.
Yeah.
And she said that, you know, Black people have almost a soft power in Germany, because in the 90s growing up, because it's so Americanized, there was a lot of Black figures on TV, Will Smith, that was almost the golden age for this type of entertainment, all these sitcoms. But there are not that many Black people actually in Germany, right? So the way that they experience racism is quite different, she told me. What do you think about that?
I think there's like
the Arabs. Or
no, super
Turks.
interesting. I think there's like how you got like different gradations of how Black people treat us. You got like how African Americans are treated, and that's like the primary cultural power, to the extent that you'll have, like, for example, Black Africans going to Tokyo pretending they're African American because African Americans are cool, Black Africans are not, right? Black Africans in, let's say, Beijing were attacked because they were seen as bringing COVID to China. Like, so that gradation exists. So African Americans within Blackness occupy a different place. Then you've got like Afro-Germans, and then you've got someone like me who, because I have a Muslim first name, and until I speak, I'm coded as Black African. So I'm treated a different way, especially when I wear a tracksuit. I'm processed very differently. So it's like, even within Blackness, there's like, what is your cultural capital? And I there is a soft power in terms of, if you look at like Afro-Germans like Tony Rüdiger, right? Like one of the world's best defenders is a Black Muslim. And it's this weird thing of like, a lot of people that will wear a Rüdiger shirt will be like, he's not really German. But he is also like one of our best defenders. And it's weird because
his name's very German as well.
Yeah,
right?
yes. It's this weird thing of like, it was similar to the parallel with the American experience, where it's like the majority of Americans, like cultural soft power, it actually comes from like progressive Americans, a lot of whom are non-white. This weird thing of like, we owe our standing to like people that we don't like. That must be a weird contradiction.
I mean, that you could look at German history as well, and look at how many of the famous Germans were also Jewish.
Oh my goodness.
Right?
Oh, hey, listen,
Einstein.
we don't talk about the Holocaust enough. And what I mean by that is, we don't talk about the Holocaust as the theft of humanity. We talk about it as a monument. We talk about stumbling stones, but actually, like, for me, the Holocaust is the playgrounds of Jewish children that are now empty. Right. And like, it's not like the cultural capital, it's not the books they gave us or the economy. It's not that. It's like, it's Jewish kids playing and families sharing jokes and nonsense and vibes, and like, you know, driving to the countryside, and like Omar tells the same old joke and it's not funny, but everyone laughs because it's Omar's only joke. And we literally lost 70 years of that. Like, we don't really talk about what the Holocaust was. And like, this vast gap at the heart of German life, the reason we're on the brink of like the Nazis coming back, it's because there's like, as a bulwark, like against that, it's like, we did not honor like the memory of Jewish people in Europe, actually. Forget even Germany, but we did not honor that. We did not honor the fact, like, look at Lithuania, like anti-Semitism was surged in Lithuania. There's not, they murdered 90%. They murdered the highest percentage of all Jewish people. And like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, and I think you have to look at Germany's history as well. And it was a country with so much culture, like with culture with a capital K, right? Like classical music, opera, all of this stuff. And since the Nazis...
Have you seen the graphic about the Nobels won before and after the Holocaust? Have you seen It's like
explain it for those who haven't.
So there's a graphic about the Nobel Prizes that Germany won before and after the Holocaust, and it falls off a cliff. And it's not. I'm not trying to appraise immigrants by what they win. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just saying, like, you can actually see one metric of what was lost culturally, and that wasn't just Nobel Prizes. That was conversations over dinner tables, discovery. You know, the best discovery creatively is when you're sitting in community. You know, like Charmaine will know this. You go for dinner of writers, people talk, ideas bounce around. You go home with a new idea for a book or a project or whatever, right? That's the beauty, and that was stolen. Like, people always say to me, Leo Messi is the greatest footballer of all time. I said, no, he's the greatest footballer of a world that's endured successive genocides. And if we'd never had a genocide, Leo Messi might not be at the top 10 of the greatest footballers ever, because we would have maximized human potential. And Germany is, you know, German society the last 70 years. I don't know if we'll ever have a proper reckoning now with what the Holocaust was. Not the rule books, not the institutions, not the stones in the ground, but the cultural loss, the emotional loss, the spiritual loss that was the devastation of the Jewish people in Germany. I don't think we've actually reckoned with that.
And, you know, to reckon with it as well, you need to go beyond the borders of Germany.
Totally. You need to be holistic.
So
you look at Poland, you look at Portugal, you look at again Lithuania. Look at all these places. You really engage with it deeply. Yeah.
Jewish people were even killed from as far away as North Africa.
Do you remember Zelensky's face? Was it Babin Yar when they bombed the Jewish memorial site when Putin bombed it? The look.
Babin Yar was the biggest site of the biggest massacre.
And when Putin bombed it, we do not talk about. There's two things we don't talk about Putin's attack on Ukraine in terms of, we don't talk about it as a sexual assault. We don't talk about it as a sexual assault. He made a rape joke before he invaded Ukraine. We also don't talk about it as a spectacular act of anti-Semitism. Like, it's deeply anti-Semitic, it's deeply personal.
Well, I think there's something particularly screwed up to wait until a country elects a Jewish president before you invade them for being Nazis, right?
Horrifying.
It makes absolutely no sense.
And to hear people I know and respected parroting that rhetoric is just beyond words.
We talked about this yesterday, didn't we? How, you know, so many people who have been really good on the Palestine issue have actually been really horrific on Ukraine, on Syria. What do you think? There's a way to bring people together so they don't get so ideological on these topics?
I struggle with this because I've spoken to many people. I've yelled at people, not yelled at them, but like in my own flat just a few days ago, we were having a conversation about genocides and all these different things, and this solipsism that this Western woman had about this issue. I was like, these people are terrible on Syria, for example. When Putin was out here bombing schools and hospitals in Syria, right? Like bombing Chechnya, reducing it to rubble, the Second Chechen War, all of this stuff. And it's like, you need to pay attention to history and what's happening here, right? Like, don't just parrot these party lines. Actually go and do your own homework. And I'm not going to lie to you. I found it impossible. It was like trying to hack into steel with like an ice pick. It was completely useless. I couldn't get through in terms of, I couldn't get her to empathize at all with like the broadness of this issue at all. Couldn't get to do it.
And you've had similar conversations with German supporters of Israel as well.
Oh my goodness.
It's the same reflex, right? Where you just deny our common humanity because one side is politically wrong.
I said to a friend, this person knows people who have lost hundreds of relatives. Like, Israel turned off the internet and bombed Gaza in the dark.
And then they killed the people bringing the light, the journalists.
Bombed Gaza in the dark. Like, I don't care. Like, I'm from the north of Uganda. We had 2 genocides in 20 years. The world didn't care about them. You may not have heard of them. Not your fault. The world didn't care about them. Still doesn't care about them. And the lesson we learned from that was like vigilance and empathy. Like someone going, oh, it's impossible. They can commit a genocide. Listen, I'm from the north of Uganda again. We committed war crimes. We had them committed against us. No one is impervious to committing war crimes. That's the point of war crimes. Anyone can do them. Anyone will. And actually, to be honest with you, Germans will. Germans will do them again. Like, I spoke to a leading activist, right, in migration, and she gave me a quote so inflammatory that the Observer would not print it at the end of my article about the rise of the far right in Germany. The editor said, we can't use that. And I said, I know you wouldn't use it. But I'm telling you, this is what she said. And she said that if things continue at the current pace, then Germany will enable a genocide partly on German soil within the next 15 years. They will do that. If we continue the current, she said a genocide, and my editor said, I can't print that. And I get why he didn't print it, but that's what she said.
So I had a protest a few weeks ago. I actually interviewed someone from a group called Germans Against Genocide, which was, had a huge demo. It was a very small block. But they said something really interesting to me, which is that if you look at the history, it's actually been 4 generations of Germans now that have been involved in genocide, because it didn't start with the Holocaust. It started with the Armenian genocide, which was committed by the Ottomans, but with support from the Kaiserreich, from the German Empire at the time. There was the Herero and Nama, and also Shark Island. Then there was the Holocaust, of course, Sinti and Roma, Polish and Slavic people, gays, communists. And then this time, what most experts agree is a genocide in Palestine, which 30% of the weapons imports have come from Germany, right? So what they were calling for was a reckoning, and for Germany to wake up and stop contributing to or committing.
The reckoning is
genocides.
coming. The reckoning is coming. And look, I have several Israeli friends, and I said, look, the problem is this, right? Like, Israel is not like... It would be easier for Israel if Israel was like other countries that don't care so much about international reputation. Like, Israelis pride themselves in being out in the world. Well, the friends of mine that travel, the ones that travel, let's not generalize. My Israeli friends that travel, being out in the world, part of culture, communities, tech. The challenge is Israel's reputation and how it sees itself as it's a nation of the world. And that is now, I think, a road that does not exist for them culturally. We're not going to see the effects of that immediately, but that is going to be extremely difficult, actually, for them to navigate in the time forward. And for Germany as well, I don't think Germany understands just how much of this is attaching to Germany, because a lot of my German friends are not necessarily that worldly enough to consider, how does this reflect also on us? But this stain is now attaching itself to German society, and you're going to see that culturally. And we talked about German guilt from World War II. It's going to attach again. It's going to, unfortunately, and I said, look, the thing about, my friend said, oh, but an Israeli friend the other day said, this flotilla, it's like, it's all PR, I said, dude, like, I think it's a good thing, because look, it's going to save Palestinian lines, and it also is going to save Israelis from themselves, actually.
And shouldn't that be Germany's job, actually?
Absolutely, it should be, but they've abdicated responsibility as a society, not individually. Lots of Germans doing great work. Don't get me wrong, so many doing great work, but not enough, and not collectively, and not as a society. And that as someone's been here for 11 years, that absolutely breaks my heart. It breaks my heart.
Musa Okwonga, thank you very much for that. Ending on a sad note, but a hopeful one as well.
That's where we are, man. Next time will be a different conversation, but for now, that's where we are.